Welcome to episode 2 of the AltBrau podcast. Today we speak with Krista Scruggs. Good friend of mine. We used to do a podcast together called Gravity. She's going to continue on with Gravity. In the next couple months, she's going to get her first episode going. Krista is currently working her way into the wine industry, taking classes here in the Bay Area. And today we speak about what it means to her as a queer woman of color navigating her way into this industry. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys enjoy this one. This is probably going to be the first in a series of slightly more serious subject matter, but we still have a good time. And I will say, when we posted the picture of me and Krista drinking the E40 malt liquor, and you'll see when we get into it why we chose that beverage, we posted it on Instagram, and E40 actually liked it. So, Mr. Earl Stevens, if you're listening and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. If you ever want to do a AltBrau collaboration malt liquor or a wine. If you guys don't know, he's actually got a couple of great wines out there. If you don't know who E40 is, you got to get up to speed on your Bay Area hip hop. So, again, thanks for listening. This is episode 2 with Krista Scruggs. Enjoy.
I don't know. It's weird. I was like nervous for this. I don't know. I guess it's good for me to talk so I don't, so I can actually be in a flow when we do talk. I've been navigating this is going to be, I'm going to have this conversation so many times.
Yeah, this is
going to the next, as long as I'm in this,
career.
My whole career, this is going to be a conversation I'm going to have to have.
The rest of your whole career.
I need to not be annoyed by it. I'm not annoyed at you, but I'm annoyed that this is going to happen, and I'm very aware of that.
Yeah, the fact that it is a thing and that you have to deal with.
Yeah, and I'll bring up an experience that I had when I was flying back from Istanbul.
Yeah, I have some questions about just as far as your time away. I have some stuff written down.
So good. So I don't have to you're going to lead everything. Am I just going to be answering questions?
Well, we've already started, so.
Oh, wait.
Let's talk about a little bit about our background, how we got to know each other. We met. Well, I guess we're mutual friends, but as far as our love affair with wine and beer, I started working in the beer world a couple years ago. And then when did you totally fall in love with wine? When did you pick up that that's something you really wanted to do?
It was a couple of years ago as well. I was working corporate for a big company and realized while working for said company that it was reiterated to me that I would never want to work corporate, but I, like any love affair, I found myself falling in love with wine. The position that I had, I spent my day half in the lab and the other half working with winemakers and learning the whole process of winemaking, even corporate winemaking at that. I just found it very interesting and realizing, which I don't think most people realize, that winemaking is one part farming, another part science, depending what type of winemaker you are, if you are all natural or you do treat your wine, and then another part, of course, Mother Nature. I think that's more involved in farming. Right. Anyway, and I fell in love, and I just stopped working corporate, and decided that I wanted to pursue winemaking.
That's cool. So you've had some experiences, not just in the U.S., like you're currently taking classes, but also you did harvest in France and Italy?
Yes,
I did. Tell us about that.
So last year, it's been, I think, about a year, I started domestically doing pruning in Washington. And that's when I think I made my mind up for sure that this is something I'm going to pursue. And then I applied for workaway programs in Europe. I knew I wanted to explore international terroirs and then explore not only just New World wines, but also Old World wines. And so I was matched with 2 winemakers, one in the both south of Italy and then south of France. The harvest happened actually mostly in France when I was in the cohorts, and when I was in Italy, it was more cellar work and preparation for harvest. And I don't think most people realize how much work goes into it. I just had 8, and in France, I think we've had conversations about this. You see, my Instagram feed or social media feed with my experience in Italy compared to my work in France. during harvest, it was a whole different ball game. But it was an opportunity that I know many people would have loved to have, and I learned so much even without a language barrier. I didn't speak French at the time, and the winemaker did not speak English, but we were still able to communicate through basic. I guess you could say this osmosis.
And love of wine.
Yeah, and love of wine.
Yeah. So you're taking classes now here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Tell us about those. Like, what's the name of the class or who's through the program?
Currently enrolled in the UC Davis winemaking certificate program. So I'm not. I think there's one route you could go and you could get your knowledge, your degree in enology or in viticulture. I'm doing the UC Davis winemaking certificate program, which I decided to go this route because one is having a couple years in the industry already, and then having hands-on experience. I didn't feel I needed to go the route of getting my degree. I feel that I will to succeed without that, but being backed, having a certificate at UC Davis, and the role that UC Davis plays in the wine industry and the respect that comes along with that, I just thought it would make my career that much easier, especially being a woman of color, a queer woman of color.
Right.
I just felt that if I find it necessary that I have to probably at times prove myself,
right,
because of lack of representation of a woman,
right,
queer, and someone of color.
Yeah. So, how many people in your class fit the stereotypical look of a wine? What is exactly? Because I can tell you about the beer world, I'm sure you know, but what is the stereotypical look of a viticulture and enology student or winemaker?
Typically cis white male.
Okay.
Cis hetero white male.
Right. Maybe a little bit skinnier than brewers.
Right.
Beer brewers, but still similar. And then how many women or people of color, or of different demographics are in your class right now?
Right now, women of color, I am the only woman of color.
Right.
Women, there are four. Actually, there's one other woman of color, an Asian woman, and there are four other women in a class of almost 30.
Right. So that tells you the demographics. Right?
Exactly.
Before we get into too much of the heavy stuff, you have also recently fallen in love with beer.
I have.
And what's your regular spot? If you want to give a shout out to any of your favorite.
Oh, shout out one time to the Good Hop off of Telegraph in Oakland. That is my go-to place. Yeah, I much respect to, of course, Beer Revolution. Much respect to any woman-owned, especially in the wine or beer industry, which Beer Revolution is woman-owned, and so is the Good Hop. But I have
you just love the Good Hop.
Deep affection for the Good Hop and everyone that works there as well. Monty and Maureen, yeah.
I'm glad that you're coming around to getting to know that beer is a better beverage than wine. So I'm glad that that's happening. So now we've talked about, the demographics in your class. What about when you did go to Europe and you were doing a harvest? I mean, what did you feel as far as the norm in those cultures, or did you feel different? Did you feel more accepted, less accepted? What was your experience in Europe?
I think just like anything else, and my experience, a person of color experience, a queer person of color's experience in Europe is going to be completely different than that in America. And I was actually, in preparation for this podcast, I did want to make a point that I think I want to speak more on my experience in America, because it's just culturally different in Europe. I never compared to in America, I feel like my race was never something I'm more aware of my race being American than I am when I was in Europe. And with that being said, that crossed over even when working in the vineyards and meeting people in the wine industry in Europe. I didn't feel necessarily out of place. And I know that may sound strange, but I just never felt that was ever, that was not on my mind when I was there. It's funny because I took a flight back and I met someone whom actually works at UC Davis, and he made it a point to make it clear that he was aware that I am not represented in this industry as a woman of color.
Right.
And that was the first time my race was ever brought up. It was from an American in the industry flying back to America. So that gives some
context.
Yeah.
How do you feel when somebody, a cis male, like becomes aware of it and acknowledges it and like acknowledges, like, do you look at it in a way as like, thank you for acknowledging it? Or do you look at it like, I don't need you to acknowledge it? Or how do you feel when that comes up? Like, look, I'm in this situation too. I invited you here because I am the typical beer guy. I am a chubby white guy wearing flannel with a beard. But at the same time, being friends with you, we've got a long history. We've done podcasts together.
Right.
We've covered these subjects on and off air, and with a lot of alcohol in our systems. But the fact is, like, I'm aware of it, and it is something that for AltBrau that I did want to talk about. I think this is probably going to be the beginning of a small series of talking about people who are either mis or underrepresented in the beverage industry. And I know you're going to be doing your podcast as well, and I'm sure you'll cover some of that too. Maybe with a little bit, tipping, 70-30 into the wine. I'm 70-30 into the beer.
Right. Yeah.
But how does it make you feel when somebody else has to kind of acknowledge it? Like they're the ones that have to bring it to the table.
Of course, in a perfect world, which this will never be, I would not like to be the main topic, the focal point as I navigate through this industry. And even before, I don't know where you started recording, but I brought it up that even preparing for this, it hit me that I'm going to have this conversation many times, and I need to check myself. And I think instead of being annoyed, take it as an opportunity to actually have a voice as being a person of color, a woman, and queer, and entering a very homogenized industry. With this particular individual, I felt that he was coming from, his intent was coming from a good place, to wrap it up, to bring it all together. In the end, he gave me his contact information and email, and I will utilize that information, that contact information, and utilize that connection as I navigate myself through this industry. And I think his intent was acknowledging that especially people of color, are not represented in this industry at all. Advertise or market it to, and don't just have an opportunity where someone's saying, hey, you're navigating yourself through this industry. Let me help you because I'm a person of power that can help you. And that's exactly what he did. And that's how I saw it. So I wasn't necessarily offended. No. And we had a 13-hour flight back, and we talked quite a bit, and his questions were, I was never offended at any time. I sincerely felt that he was acknowledging that I don't have representation in this industry, and he is someone who can assist with that.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So you want to talk more about your experience here in the United States, obviously.
Right.
I mean, that's home for us. But don't look at the notes. I see you peeking at my notes here. So when you're here in the Bay Area, do you feel a little bit that there's a little bit more acceptance? I mean, when we go to Good Hop or Beer Revolution or any of these spots, I'll put it out there and say I think Oakland and the Greater Bay Area, but specifically Oakland, is a lot different than maybe the rest of the country.
Absolutely.
Before I came here, before you came over, I was over at Beer Revolution having a quick beer, and and knowing I was going into this podcast, I was like, I'm gonna do a little head count, and there was one other Black woman there. There was, like 3 Black dudes there, and then a variety of every kind of, a lot of ethnically diverse and also just unclear. You can't even tell. Like everyone is so blended in Oakland. I think that's part of the reason why we love it here.
Absolutely.
But I do suspect, and from my short travels, I suspect it's not like that everywhere else.
Yeah, it's not. There's, I think even in Oregon, there's a documentary coming out called Red, White, and Black from a winemaker, a Black male winemaker in Oregon. And the documentary is about people of color, people within the LGBT community who are winemakers in Oregon. I think he's actually, with the Vintners Association of Oregon, the only registered Black winemaker in Oregon.
And there's a lot of winemakers
And there's a lot of winemakers in Oregon. And I think in Napa, out of all the wineries there are 20. winemakers in Napa, registered winemakers in Napa. And granted, we're in Oakland, so there aren't any wineries here. However, there are a lot of wine shops going back to Good
Right.
Hop, which is owned by a queer woman, which I find as a safe place. And I think that's probably why I
Gravitate that way.
towards there and where it's located. I see a lot of women and people of color and people within the LGBTQ community there, and it's nice to see yourself reflected.
Yeah. I don't have that problem. I can pretty much go into any bar in the United States. So yeah, I mean, I think we're in a fortunate place to be living here in Oakland, and we have so many great bars so close to us. You know, one big thing is, you were talking about marketing and being marketed to. So I have, as you can see, there's a microphone set up behind me pointing at the TV. I'm going to do my best to pick up the audio, but this is a commercial from I believe like the 1970s or 80s for malt liquor. And we're going to talk about, marketing and products that are marketed to the African American community. So we're gonna watch this. I want to see what your opinion is real quick. So
I did not know this was happening.
Let me get this queued up. Just
okay.
What's going down besides beer? Oh, man, I'll turn this place into a car wash. The Schlitz Malt Liquor Bowl got more taste than beer, more quality ingredients than premium beer. Boom does have more taste than beer. What is the brew that's got more taste for you than your beer, man? Oh! No one does it like the bull.
I thought you were going to do like a Colt 45
I mean,
commercial.
that's the classic. But the thing is, Billy D. Williams is actually a classy motherfucker. I don't feel like there's any overt offensiveness or racism.
No.
Now, this commercial was a little bit funnier to me because it's like an actual reflection of what you would see in like a typical beer commercial, which would be not 8 or 9 out of 10 people white, and then you've got the token black friend in the background. And this one, you literally see the two jive honkies in the background of the 70s like soul, blaxploitation vibe kind of malt liquor commercial.
Right.
Now, there's a new malt liquor on the market from E40, and I wanted to ask your opinion of, do you feel like this is something that is a positive addition to a market by having somebody who is, part of the greater community actually being behind it? Or is it really negative in the sense of keeping old stereotypes alive?
Absolutely not. Because we also have to remember that E40, aka Earl Stevens, also has 3 wines that are out there that he released 3 years ago, which is a very smart move. And I think it's awesome that there is someone of color and also in the hip hop community and the reach that he has. And this is because of people are not, because when you watch, for example, you see a wine ad, a wine commercial, you're going to see affluent white people sitting in this expensive tasting room drinking wine. I don't remember the last time I actually saw a wine ad that contained people of color, and they're not reaching out to people of color at all. And I think there's a statistic out there that I read that African Americans in particular, I don't know if I think it's on African Americans. We could fact check this whenever this gets blocked, but are 240% more likely to spend $20 or more on a bottle of wine, which most people will spend like I think $5 to $10 on a bottle of wine, or don't even want to even pay, and the buying power is there, but they're not even getting marketed to. And so with E40, that's someone who has reached within the Black community and the hip hop community, saying, "Hey, I have these 3 varietals, and this is wine, and this is something you could drink too. This you could participate in this particular culture." And with him releasing the malt liquor beer, I think that's his way of trying to introduce. I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now he actually comes out with a craft beer, because I think this is his way to introduce the Black community to this realm of alcohol.
It could definitely be introduced, and I'm glad that you're interested because I'm about to open a bottle right now.
Of the E40?
That's right.
I haven't tasted it.
Me either.
I know that the Good Hop did a Drake's versus E40, and I believe Drake's one, but that in itself, that a beer shop, one is also introducing the community to this other half of a malt liquor. We were in a craft beer shop, a well-respected craft beer shop, and they were carrying a malt liquor by E40, and I think that's fucking awesome as well.
And I didn't get to go to the event, but from what I saw, there was no sarcastic kind of judgment. It wasn't like a tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, we're gonna have this Drake's versus this shit stuff. They really were like, they were actually trying to get E40 to show up.
Exactly. And I think that's very telling of where if given an opportunity, people of color in the industry can actually make moves if given an opportunity, just like I said with anything else. And granted, it doesn't help that it's E40, so people are going to support that.
I was going to bring up some of his commercials for us to watch, but there's not as much dialogue over him. It's a lot more music. Mm-hmm. But I will say that he actually hit the mark as far as like diverse crowd. He has like, Hispanic dudes on skateboards. He has black dudes on skateboards. He has people in the studio. It's people around a campfire, people at a barbecue. Like he's hitting like what he's trying to do is like show diversity.
And he's targeting the number one market that you should, which is millennials. Which at this, I feel that's a whole different world that I feel like if you're a person of color navigating within the craft beer and wine industry, and if you actually just tap into millennials, you're gonna kill it.
There you go. Well, hey, cheers.
Cheers. I'm so excited to drink this. I've been wanting to drink it.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious as well.
It smells like a malt liquor too.
Yeah, it's definitely not trying to be anything else.
What is that? What is ABV on this?
10.
That's not bad.
Yeah, so for $6 you get, or $6.50 or whatever, you get 40 ounces of 10%.
And that price point too. Jeez Louise.
But that goes back, if you look at some of the malt liquor history, there is, in my opinion, some dicey marketing from, E40 is somebody of the community. Like I said,
right.
There's some people who are definitely not from the community that are marketing in some funky ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it is interesting that he can kind of put his spin on. At least it's like, kind of own it,
Right. And I think
if you're going to sell it to me, then and people like me, well, we're going to own it.
Exactly. And I think that will open the doors to certain liquor stores, corner shops in particular neighborhoods to carry craft beers, because he is going to, I would not be surprised because if a craft beer is carrying his product and he's crossing over into that realm, which I think this is his jump off, I think it's only going to open more doors for, you could go to a certain liquor store in a neighborhood and actually find, even if it's a 6-pack of Lagunitas, which there's certain liquor stores I know I cannot go there and I cannot find craft beer at all.
They still, right here in Oakland, let alone if you start hitting those spots off the freeway and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But even in areas of Oakland where there's definitely neighborhoods that, you're not going to find, you're lucky to find, imports like
exactly.
Newcastle or something.
Right.
So what do you think of this? It's really not bad. As far as malt liquors go,
I would pay $6 to like brown paper bag this and chill at the lake and drink it.
Exactly.
I would. That's the price point is, I think that's
what he's going for.
Yeah, not amount. And it's 10%, you said?
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
10%.
Yeah.
So E40, if you're listening, you ever want to come on the show, let's talk. And if AltBrau opens a bar, which is long-term goal sometime down the line, I will definitely carry your product.
Hell yeah.
So are you familiar with Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn Brewing?
No.
So Garrett Oliver is really well known for essentially pairing food with beer. He is a really big guy in the culinary world, but he actually used to be a manager for a rock venue in England. Even though he's from the United States, he just studied in England. And then he came back over after getting exposed to the great beer in the UK, came back and he started working with a former reporter that did war zone reporting, and they opened up Brooklyn Brewing. And it's hard to find their beers in California. I don't believe they're distributed at all in California. Mm-hmm. But if you can get a bottle of the Sriracha Ace, it's real good. Sriracha Ace. And now the thing is with Garrett, he's one of those individuals that he gets asked as like the biggest name in craft beer who is a black man. He gets asked these questions the most, and he's gotten to a point where he's pretty annoyed with them. So you might, if you want to see how he handles it, but when you can look into your future a little bit. He doesn't so much divert attention away from it, but he makes sure that it's about the beer and about
Right.
And that's something I was also going to ask is, if you're somebody the in the beverage field and you do feel like you have a unique perspective, do you feel that you need to really like put yourself out there and tell everyone that story? Or do you feel like you need to keep your head down and let the quality of your product speak?
I think the quality of my products speak. I don't feel that I need to, especially in the wine industry, I need to educate people as to why Black people are underrepresented in the wine industry.
Yeah.
If you just do your history, do your research,
Or if you just look around.
Black people own 1% of farms, represent 1% of farming in America. That is due, if you go to history, with discriminatory policy and slavery. Going to our introduction to the wine industry, civil rights movement happened like a little over 50 years ago. At that point in time, Black people were not allowed to dine in certain areas. So if you just do your research, it's common sense as to why we're not represented in this community. I would rather the focus be turned on how can we change this, as opposed to me talking about as to why I think it is and this is not. I don't want to be known as. I would like my wine. Yeah, to answer your question, I would like my wine to speak for itself. I love that I will be able to represent women, people of color, and the queer community as being someone that's in this industry, but I do not want to talk about this
You're saying
all the
like
time.
lead by example.
Yeah,
is what you're basically
exactly.
saying. Now,
And
what do you think about Harlem Brewing? Celeste Beatty started Harlem Brewing, and if you look at the imagery, on their website and stuff, it's clear that they are doing, art shows in Harlem, and they are. I mean, I would say 85% of the people in their pictures are African American, and but they don't. You'll never see it say on their marketing material, Black owned. It won't say, whatever. They're just doing it.
Right.
They're just leading. Like they're just there in those communities doing it.
Because we are not. If the industry were represented us and other advertising realms, and we could see each other in ads, then there wouldn't be a need for that. They're doing that because we don't see ourselves reflected in any other target marketing of craft beer or in wines. When I move forward, when I navigate throughout the industry, and eventually and hopefully will have my own, for example, my first vintage, how I want to advertise it, it would be, it's important to represent myself in that, which would be people of color, queer, and why am I forgetting who I am? And a woman. But also inclusive to everyone else. As well. I think that's awesome that they're doing that. I don't see anything wrong with that at all.
Do you feel that despite being underrepresented, do you feel that the wine and beer industries there is an inherent inclusiveness that it may not be represented currently, but underneath it there is a tone of that everybody can be a part of this? I feel that drinking is one of those biggest common things that we can all do together, and it starts breaking down social barriers.
I think both the craft beer and wine industry is clearly very homogenous. Do I think there's room for it to change and it'll always be that way? No. I just think that you have to give people opportunity to navigate and be exposed, and that just starts with going back with the marketing and advertising and who they're talking. They haven't. Both industries have shown very little interest to market and target people of color, and I think it's going to take people like me and other people in the industry that are currently in industries, for example, the beer and company you're talking about, to do that, to change that, and I think and naturally will progress to be more inclusive. I don't think it's. And it also goes back to the history of both industries, that there's a reason why it is there. I think, but that could be changed.
Right.
Am I answering the question? Did I answer that question properly?
I think so.
Okay.
So, one thing is, as a hopeful entrepreneur, somebody who wants to run a business, one thing to consider, and I wanted to see what your feedback was, in the article that I sent you, it's on Thrillist.com from Dave Infante. He asked the question, basically, who's drinking craft beer? Now, you kind of mentioned some of the numbers as far as the buying power in wine. Mm-hmm. Now, he kind of broke down that, the African-American community, percentage-wise, is not drinking as much craft beer. As an entrepreneur, do you feel that you would need to market to a group of people that is not currently as if hoping to get their interest and to make them buyers? I mean, or do you feel that you would need to focus your marketing towards people who are already in demographically already buying your product?
Both. I mean, think about, for example, what happened with, for example, Patron, which is a shitty tequila. And
Just kidding, Patron. If you want to sponsor the show, let me know.
and well, that's my I
I'm
don't
just-
I don't I
I'm just
don't enjoy Patron. And
I don't enjoy tequila.
And then there we go. And how the hip hop community affected that particular spirit. Rosé. Right now there are people. I had a conversation with a fellow person of color whom I know knows nothing about wine at all. But one thing that she does know is that she likes rosé, and that has been fed through people in the hip hop community,
Right.
talking about rosé, popping bottles of rosé. I guess what I'm roundabout trying to say is that if there's these people, these businesses, especially these people have the power to control the marketing, advertising, and both industries, there'd be a fool not there's. I feel like they're being really foolish by not targeting these particular markets, because they will buy it, and they could just simply attach themselves to any, which E40 I think is doing on his own without someone sponsoring him. He's doing on his own, but have someone within the community as a sponsor, as a spokesperson, and their sales I guarantee would jump 100, 200% because they're tapping into an industry, and then those products would be in this liquor stores or the grocery stores in those particular communities. And then, yeah, am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So both, I think it's necessary to do both. And also, if you, some people I don't think care. Like, you may not, if you start your own beer brand, do you care if people of color are drinking your beer? Do you care?
I want everybody drinking my
I
beer.
know, but do you care enough to tap into that community? Are you that conscious? I don't think these people are that conscious. If their business is doing well, they're not sitting there.
Are we tapping into
Are we
this?
tapping into this particular how many people of color are drinking our beer? If their business is successful, I really don't think these people are losing sleep over the fact of who's drinking it. And I think that article more or less touched on that. Like,
Right.
does it matter?
Yeah, that was one of the questions, was does it matter? To answer your question, is if I were to do something, I think it goes back to being inclusive. I think by setting your business up as far as the tone of your marketing and the way you put yourself out there is basically saying, everybody's welcome. But that also, some of it is also kind of by omission. You have to think, like, if you're not actively including people in your marketing material, if you're not actively including them in your culture, are you perpetuating the system as it
Right.
exists? So that's
Like, are you okay being in a homogenous industry, knowing,
right.
are you okay with that? And you've had the power to, even just a little bit, change it. Then that's important to me, that for me to be inclusive to me, who I am as a person, and of course everyone else as well, but being very self-aware how homogenous this industry is, I feel as a responsible business owner, an entrepreneur, and as a human being, you should do your efforts to make it as inclusive as possible.
right.
Yeah. And I feel that you would do that. I trust that.
I hope
Yeah.
so. So we talked a little bit about Garrett Oliver at Brooklyn Brewing. We talked about Harlem Brewing, Celeste Beatty. They just got a deal with actually 39 Walmarts in the New York area to carry their beer. So they're going to have their beer right next to Mendocino and a few other craft brands. I also want to...
That's a big deal, too.
Yeah, I also want to mention, if you get an opportunity to try 18th Street from Indiana, they actually got rated the #1 brewery in Indiana. And I believe that's the same state that Three Floyds is in, so that's saying something.
Really?
Yeah, and so Drew Fox was someone who was working in the hospitality field, went to Belgium, was staying at a hostel, and fell in love with beer there. Came back, was like, holy shit, I need to start making beer. And I've only been able to find their stuff at a Berkeley Bowl here in the Oakland, or
one?
in Berkeley. I found it at Berkeley Bowl West.
Okay.
And in cans, saisons, different things like that. And everything I've had is delicious. So check that one out if you get a chance. There's also, of course, Omnipollo. I don't know if have you ever heard of Omnipollo?
No, you're teaching me things left and right here. So, this is awesome.
So this there's two guys, one behind the art, and I forget his name. He does all the labels, but he works together, of course, with the brewmaster and co-owner. His name is Henrik Fenty, and he actually came out with a beer, and unfortunately we don't have it to drink here, but they came out with a beer called Yellow Belly. If you get a chance, if you hand me my phone, I'll pull up a picture for you to see.
The label.
Yeah, so he worked with the artist that does his labels, and they actually did like a white piece of paper outside with 2 holes put out, and the top is wrapped around, so it looks like a KKK hood on the bottle, and it says Yellow Belly across it. And a lot of stores did not know that the brewer is black. And they were like, what the hell is this?
Right.
That beer came out, and there was a lot of stores that were actually taking the wrapping off, but underneath the wrapping there was a description that said, yellow belly means, and it was like the definition, like coward.
Right.
And then when they released the beer on their Instagram, they did the whole description on the bottom. They put hashtag fuck racism.
That's that's punk rock as fuck.
So
I love that.
Here's the picture.
Holy shit.
I'm showing her the label.
You're not joking.
Yeah. So, and of course it's a stout, so it's black. It's a black beer.
I think that is punk rock as fuck.
So this goes back to the question of what I was saying was,
That's awesome.
Can you make great product, because this is a very highly rated beer taste wise, but still make a statement from your perspective?
Absolutely. To have that power and do that, I think that is
This is
genius.
beer as art.
Yes, it is. And it's making a point too. Oh my God, I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
I
wish I could
really
find that
awesome.
bottle. Yeah, it might look weird if I buy it, but oh well. Actually, the next beer, if you want to finish up the last sip of we didn't kill a whole 40, by the way. We just sipped a little bit of it. The next beer is from Omnipollo. It's not that one, but it's one of his other beers I wanted you to try. So
I'm excited because that is awesome. There is some pride that comes when you're drinking a beer from, whether say it was a woman brewer, or even someone in the LGBT community, or or a black person, or any person of color for that matter. It's a sense of pride too, that knowing that this group of people are so underrepresented and they're doing something pretty awesome.
Exactly.
It makes you feel good, and it just makes the experience of that beer, that wine, that much better.
And it helps you, know who you're supporting.
Right.
Omnipollo is an interesting one because he's what they call a gypsy brewer, although that term in itself has some inherent racial undertones, so you got to be careful with that one too.
I think he's doing that on purpose. This is
no,
you don't think he's doing that on purpose?
I think that's just the industry term for it.
Oh.
So the folks at Grimm Ales in Brooklyn, they call it nomadic brewing. So it's a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
I thought he was doing that as like tongue-in-cheek thing.
That's like all like McKellar and Stillwater and all those breweries. The industry calls it gypsy brewing, but it's not. He's not doing tongue-in-cheek.
Has there been dialogue about how problematic
there has been dialogue
is?
about that one. Maybe that'll be a different show, because actually I'm going to do an episode about gypsy brewing, alternating proprietorship, nomadic brewing, whatever you want to call it. There's contract brewing. There's all these different things. So I'm actually going to be bringing a friend in that has some experience with those brands that do that.
That's awesome.
So this beer is called Eniara, and it's a pale ale brewed with lemon juice, 6%.
The color is beautiful, and on the
kinda,
nose is very citrusy.
Oh yeah, it's actually really hoppy.
Cheers.
Too. Yeah, cheers.
What's that ABV on this?
6%.
You did say that. Okay.
That's
a perfect, I could see myself. That's a perfect summertime. The weather is nice right now.
Pale ale. It's exactly what he said. What it says it is. It's delicious.
It's delicious.
And he won recently at the Rate Beer Best Festival, same festival where 18th Brewing won Best Brewery in Indiana. Mm-hmm. They recently won in the top 200 breweries in the world out of like 2,600 that were in the ranking. Mm-hmm. In the top 100 was Omnipollo.
What particular?
No, I mean, they judge ratebeer.com, looks at all the beers they've ever put out and how they're all judged, like the total rating on average for all their beers. So you might make the best stout in the world, but if all your other beers are shit, you're not going to make that list. His beers are so consistently good and high rated that he was able to get ranked in the top 100.
I like that rating system. It's that's awesome. I didn't know that it operated in that way.
It's the first year that they've done it publicly, at an event was this last year.
Gotcha.
So it'll be back.
That leads me to, I remember the last time, vividly remember out for pizza, I think about a year and a half ago, and you told me that a black woman had won. Am I jumping the gun already?
No, we were gonna. I had the notes written down. I believe you're talking about Annie Johnson from Sacramento.
Yeah.
She won Best Home Brewer in the United States, and this is a black woman in Sacramento. And she was at the time taking care of her elderly mother when she got the phone call that she had won. And Now, the sad part is, if you do the research, she tried to get jobs before becoming like this minor celebrity. She was trying to get jobs all over the place in the brewing industry, and of course, couldn't land one. Now, luckily she's working with a company called Pico Brew that they're making these really cool homebrew systems that basically go right onto your countertop. It's a little bit bigger than maybe a microwave, and you can brew right there. Basically, everything's automated.
And it's like with her name on it, or
No,
is like
she's kind of like the unofficial sales rep, or like they'll do ads like in brewing publications. There'll be a full page ad, and she'll be pictured with it, saying
Gotcha.
that she was the number one rated brewer in the home brewer in the United States, and she stands by that product, so that says something. And she goes on tours with them and helps like trade shows and all that.
And she does, I think, per the article that you sent to me prior to this podcast, they're like dinner. She does like brew dinners.
Yeah, I believe she does stuff in the Sacramento area still. So
Okay,
we should go. We should look up her schedule, see if she's got something going on.
I would be totally down.
So another thing I wanted to ask about is, do you think, we were talking about consumers, but as far as actual brewers or, winemakers, do you feel like there's inherent racism in the system? As far as, one of the points brought up in that Thrillist article was that, it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time to open a brewery or to start, and it applies to a winery too. And like, it's
Right.
pretty hard to get a loan when, this is historically known that,
Right.
people of color are not getting loans, not because they have bad credit, but because they're just being ignored.
Exactly, and I think the McBride sisters are like these two women in the wine industry. Both come from wine backgrounds, and they have a brand right now, and they touch a lot on that. And that's it's hard in general for a person of color, an entrepreneur, to get a loan
Right.
for something, and that is definitely going to be even more highlighted within a homogenous industry, just as the wine and craft beer industry. And so, yes, that has affected why I think there's a lack of people of color, especially in the wine industry, when you have to have land. And like I said, stated before, there's only 1% of farmers in America, and that's rooted through our history and certain policies that prevented people of color from owning land. I don't know people. I think people forget that winemaking is farming,
Right.
and there's routes you could take, but it requires a lot of capital to start to be a brewer, to own your own brewery and or own your own winery. And there are things in place that will prevent you doing that in your person of color.
Right.
And it's innately, ingrained
Ingrained in the system.
system.
And what do you think? What do you think the steps are that the industry could take to start reversing this homogenized kind of culture that we've set up?
I think it goes back to, like, for example, the individual that I met who is in an industry, and he is self-aware of the fact that it is a homogenized industry, and that he sees a young person of color trying to penetrate that industry, and he's using his power and saying, I'm gonna do what I can to make sure that this happens. And people utilizing that and making sure and being self-aware that it's a homogenized industry and doing what they can with their power to make it more inclusive. Because just like anything else inside, it's not the people of color there to make the moves, it's the people who are, that's usually the cis hetero white males who can be the ones who make those moves.
I'll do my best. So, Chris, there's anything you want to plug or any upcoming things that you want to talk about? I know you've got some stuff in the works. I don't know if you're ready to announce anything quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, you could go to gravitypodcast.com. Due to me pursuing my dream of becoming a winemaker and being very inundated with school, the podcast was supposed to launch last month, but it's being delayed and hopefully it'll launch next month. But you can still go to the site, and then from there, eventually, you'll find information when I have my first podcast. And of course, Tim is going to be a guest on there as well. Tim and I used to do Gravity Podcast together.
That's right.
And that's pretty much it. And I also want to plug the places that I frequent the most. If you're ever in the Bay Area, which is the Good Hop and Ordinaire Wine.
Ordinaire is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen in to Krista's podcast, and she's using me kind of as the guinea pig. This is only episode 2 for me, and starting to get the bugs worked out. So hopefully she can get hers going strong, and I'll figure out some of the issues off the bat for her.
And together we'll both dominate both our industries.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening. Krista, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. And we're going to drink more off air now.
Fuck yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.